Would you keep going if you already knew you would never succeed? Not tomorrow, not next year, never. Imagine waking up every morning, doing the exact same thing, knowing it would never change the outcome. Most people would stop. Some would call it pointless. Others would call it a waste of a life. Ancient China remembered someone who didn't. Not a king, not a warrior, not even a god. A tiny bird. Every single day she carried one small twig, then another, then another. She flew toward an endless ocean, dropped the twig into the water, turned around, and did it again. The next day, nothing had changed. The sea was just as vast. The waves were just as endless. Her tiny branch disappeared without a trace. Yet she returned. Again, and again, and again. She wasn't building a nest. She wasn't searching for food. She wasn't preparing for winter. She was trying to fill an entire ocean. Everyone who heard the story knew the same thing. It could never be done. Not in 100 years. Not in 1,000. Not even in eternity. So why didn't she stop? That question has echoed through China for more than 2,000 years. Because myths rarely survive, simply because they are strange. They survive because they refuse to let us stop asking questions. Every civilization chooses different heroes. Some remember great conquerors. Some celebrate brilliant kings. Some admire fearless explorers. Ancient China chose to remember a bird that could never finish what she had started. Why? What could anyone possibly learn from a creature that was destined to fail? Perhaps the story was never about the sea. The oldest version appears in an ancient book known as the Classic of Mountains and Seas. Its description is remarkably brief. A young girl, the youngest daughter of Yandi, the Flame Emperor, went to the Eastern Sea. She never returned. She drowned. After her death, she became a small bird named Jingwei. Every day she carried twigs and stones from the western mountains. Every day she dropped them into the sea. And that is almost everything the ancient text tells us. It never explains why. It never tells us what she hoped to achieve. It never says whether she believed she could succeed. It simply leaves us with one unforgettable image: a tiny bird, an endless ocean, and a task that could never be completed. Perhaps the real mystery was never whether Jingwei could fill the sea. Perhaps the real mystery is much closer to us. Why do some people keep going, even after they know they can never win? To understand Jingwei, we first have to forget the version most people know. Today she is often remembered as a symbol of perseverance. Never give up. Keep working, keep trying. But the oldest story says almost none of those things. It never praises her determination. It never calls her heroic. It never even explains her motivation. It simply watches. A bird flies to the mountains. She picks up a single twig. She carries it across the sky. She drops it into the sea. Then she turns around and does it again. The ocean never becomes smaller. The waves never become calmer. Nothing appears to change. That detail is easy to overlook. But it changes the entire meaning of the story. Because if nothing ever changes, then Jingwei's actions cannot be measured by success. Centuries later, people became uncomfortable with that silence. Surely there had to be a reason. Some later texts said she hated the sea. It had taken her life. She swore that one day she would bury it beneath mountains of wood and stone. Others gave her new names: the bird of oath, the wronged bird, the emperor's daughter sparrow. Each name tried to answer the same question. Why would anyone choose a task that could never be finished? Perhaps the answer was grief. Perhaps it was anger. Perhaps it was revenge. Or perhaps the ancient storytellers wanted us to keep wondering. Because they never told us which answer was correct. Instead, they left us with an image. A bird so small that the sea barely noticed her, yet every morning she returned. There is something strangely familiar about that. Most of us have our own oceans. A dream that never seems any closer. A loss that never completely disappears. A wound that time never fully heals. We keep trying, not because we believe tomorrow will suddenly change everything, but because stopping would mean accepting that the story is over. Maybe Jingwei understood something we often forget. Some battles are not fought because they can be won. Some battles are fought because they are worth refusing to abandon. And that may be why this tiny bird has survived in human memory for more than 2,000 years. More than 1,000 years after the classic of mountains and seas was written, one man changed the way China would remember Jingwei forever. His name was Yuanming. Instead of seeing a bird trying to fill the sea, he saw something much deeper. He placed Jingwei beside another legendary figure, Xingtian, the warrior who continued fighting after losing his head. At first they seem completely different. One is enormous. The other is tiny. One carries a bronze axe. The other carries a single twig. One fights against heaven. The other challenges the sea. Yet Tao Yuanming believed they were telling the same story. Neither of them could succeed. Xingtian would never overthrow heaven. Jingwei would never fill the ocean. They already knew that. And yet, they continued. That changes everything. Because suddenly, these myths are no longer about victory. They are about choice. The choice to continue when success is no longer the reason. Western audiences often compare Jingwei to Sisyphus. The comparison makes sense. Both spend eternity performing an impossible task. Both seem trapped inside endless repetition. But there is one important difference. Sisyphus is punished. His labor is forced upon him. Jingwei chooses her own burden. No god commands her to return. No curse forces her to carry another twig. Every flight back to the mountains is her own decision. Perhaps that is why her story feels different. She is not trying to escape suffering. She is deciding what her suffering will mean. That is a question every generation eventually faces. Not everyone loses a kingdom. Not everyone fights heaven. But everyone experiences something they cannot change. The death of someone they love. A dream that slips away. A future that never arrives. Some people spend the rest of their lives pretending those things never happened. Others carry them with quiet determination. Not because they expect the past to change, but because they refuse to let the past decide who they become. Maybe that was always the real meaning of Jingwei. The ocean was never just an ocean. It was grief, loss, memory, everything too vast for one life to overcome. And the tiny bird flying back each morning was hope. Not hope that the ocean would disappear, but hope that one small act of courage still mattered. For more than 2,000 years, Jingwei never disappeared. Dynasties rose, empires fell, languages changed. Yet the tiny bird kept flying. Poets wrote about her. Artists painted her. Children grew up hearing her story. Even today, people still speak her name. Not because anyone believes a bird can fill an ocean, but because everyone understands what the ocean truly represents. There will always be oceans in every human life. Grief, failure, regret, time, dreams that never come true. People we can never bring back. No one defeats those oceans. Not completely. And perhaps that was never the point. The oldest version of the story never tells us that Jingwei succeeds. It never tells us she fails. It simply leaves her flying, carrying another twig, crossing the same sky, returning to the same sea. Again, and again, and again. For over 2,000 years, she has never stopped. Maybe that is why this tiny bird has outlived kingdoms, emperors, and entire civilizations. Not because she teaches us how to succeed, but because she asks us a question that every generation must answer for itself. What do you do when the thing standing before you cannot be changed? Do you turn away? Do you surrender? Or do you choose to carry one more stone? Every morning, millions of people make that choice. A parent raising a child, a doctor searching for a cure, an artist creating work that may never be remembered, someone learning how to live after losing the person they loved most. None of them know whether their efforts will change the world. Yet they continue. Perhaps courage has never been believing that you will succeed. Perhaps courage is deciding that something is worth doing, even if you already know you may never finish it. So perhaps the story was never asking whether Jingwei could fill the sea. Perhaps it has been asking us the same question for more than 2,000 years. If you knew your greatest effort would never change the world, would you still keep going?